Right, let's go ahead and tackle some of those accessories then. Okay, so full disclosure, I have cheated a tiny little bit. I said, oh, we've got a mood board and everything like that, and we do. I may or may not have invented a second one. Let me share that with you. Ta-da! Okay, so it's just a kind of smaller mood board here, and the aim of this mood board was just to essentially explore ideas, focusing on the details, and not being kind of wrapped up in the key ideas mood board. But I still have that here as well. Never throw this away. This, of course, is our kind of visual Bible and guide through all this process. So never, not refer to it. By all means, always have that out there and available for your reference. But you may also wish to make kind of sub-mood boards if you like. It's more of a reference board rather than a mood board in terms of what you'd like to go ahead and explore in your designs. Okay, so I think the first part we're going to do here is let's address some of the kind of weaponry that she's got going on here. Okay, so let's go over here. I'll move that kind of belt down there. So in terms of weaponry, I thought I very much want the character to dual wield at some point, dual wield pistols. Now, I would like to say that she has the capacity to hold a rifle, but in terms of gameplay, that's just going to be something that's going to be slung over her back. So something in terms of actually modeling for the character, we're going to have to focus on holsters. Holsters for both the pistols and the sword that she's got by her side. Yes, I'm still very much keen on her having some kind of melee weapon there in the form of a blade. So looking at the holsters in particular for the pistols, I've selected quite a few, but kind of kept the idea of simplicity. And I've always had a long-standing notion that the simpler the idea, well, it's not really directly equatable, but the simpler ideas I find always tend to resonate and work well with me personally, not from just a preference point of view, but also in terms of a modeling and the final kind of outcome. It always seems to look better, and that might be because if it's a simpler design, you can often focus on the elements that would make it pretty and make it look nice and get all the detail in there. So I guess what I'm saying is a long-winded way of saying that when it comes to a gun and pistol holster, I'm going to elect to go for the simpler design. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's this one here, that one there, and perhaps this one here as well, because that's interesting how it hooks onto two different parts of whatever it might be attached to. Okay, now this one here, these are simple holsters, but it's a little bit overkill, and although simple, they are perhaps a little bit too plain in this instance. Okay, so I'm going to disqualify that idea there. Now let's have a look at these other remaining 5, and this one here is quite nice. It's something I would more imagine a pirate to have access to, having a kind of double flintlock pistols essentially, drawn from the same side, I guess in case one runs out of ammo. But I'm not really feeling it for this character. I think this character would benefit from individual holsters placed in different areas of her body, so I'm going to discount that idea as well. That leaves us with 4. So these 4 are pretty good. This is a nice hip holster, but I do have to say it looks a little bit too modern, so with that in mind, I'm going to have to discount him as well. And here we go. We're left with 3. 3 simple yet elegant solutions. Okay, so let's go ahead now, and I'm going to kind of draw up some ideas for some pistol holsters here. I'll move them off to one side on my other screen here. Again, having 2 screens is an absolute wonderful treat. And you can see here I've selected 2 emissaries from the variations file to join me here, just to remind me of our overall character concept in case you want to borrow some ideas from that. And I'm going to break my rule. I'm not going to use a light blue pen or anything like that. I'm just going to go straight with black, and I'm going to sketch in some ideas here now. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a start. So keeping in mind the whole gothic element, I'm going to try and stay away from flat top things. So instead of drawing a holster that's just basically almost like a sock, something like that, I'm going to try and introduce some interesting curvature like on one of those designs there. So for example, I might do one of these that kind of has a kind of strap in the middle there, and then just comes down to reveal the rest of the holster at the front, and then excuse the kind of wibbly wobbly lines a little bit, but maybe sort of come down like that. And maybe at the bottom, I think I'd go for a slightly curved bottom like that. Something like that I think would be quite nice. And you can see it's very much like that holster there, but of course it matters what we put on it. So for things like a holster and stuff like that, I think the overall design is probably going to be quite simple, but maybe what you adorn the holster with can help make it look unique. Or what do I mean by that? Well, essentially I mean this character is going to possess emblems or trinkets of some kinds, or I guess medallions or something like that I want to just kind of dot her around her general outfit there. So I would think about adding one of them to the holster as well. Okay, and most of the detail I find when it comes to things like this is a lot of detail can actually be added in the stitching. Okay, so generally speaking, I'm just going to add a little line here that's going to show where the stitches would go. Okay, and a lot of the detail can kind of come from the stitches of itself, so I don't want to inundate any particular item with too much detail and intricate patterns, so I'll just kind of leave it relatively simple for now. And truth be told, in terms of any more patterns and stuff like that, I will probably leave that to later on after we finish the base sculpt. Okay, so that's the generic design there. Let's go ahead and kind of duplicate that and see what else we can add to it. So we could sort of have a strap that comes around the top and fastens perhaps maybe here in the middle somewhere. We can kind of employ the same idea we use for the belt that goes around her waist. So it suggests that it was all made by perhaps the same leather worker, perhaps. Maybe she frequents a particular shop to get her leathery goods from. And there we go. Okay, so again, follow the similar idea to her belt there. Okay, and then that just kind of goes off wherever it needs to go. And you could have a simple kind of buckle like that, or you could, or kind of button, or you could even actually, if we bring that idea out a bit more, you could use exactly the same fastening method for the actual belt with the holes. So if we use big holes there, actually that probably wouldn't, that probably wouldn't look so good. We'll leave it with the kind of fastener like that. Okay, something like that. Now let's iterate on this design a little bit more. I will kind of duplicate this one. What happens if it wasn't the stitching so much that held this holster together, but perhaps it was more the fact it was kind of strapped down a little bit? So maybe we can employ the same kind of visual motif that we've got going of our character here. We can actually use belts to kind of strap the holster together a bit in two areas, something like that. Now you may find that as we keep adding belts to our character, we're going to kind of suffer from overcrowding, which is very true. You definitely can suffer from overcrowding it. You know, if there's a belt attached to everything, it kind of ends up ruining the design a little bit somewhat. So we've got to be somewhat cautious about how many buckles and belts we put somewhere, you know, but at the same time, I feel we can be quite liberal with where we place them. I'm going to draw this buckle here as the buckle to end them all, rather than constantly drawing buckles all the time. So there we go, something like that. And then I'll just duplicate it and resize it. So there we go. Yeah, so you can see we're just adding kind of different elements on top of one another to see what kind of works. Okay, so that's that particular one design explored. Let's explore the other design. Let's explore one here that's kind of got a particular deliberate curve in one direction and see how that works out for us. So let's create a new layer, and I suppose we can continue it over here in this space. So let's see, we've got that kind of curvature up there, and then it curves down there, and there's kind of a little gap where the gun could kind of peek out a little bit, but then it's fastened around here, and then it's got like a little kind of curve at the bottom as well. We could do that. Now it's got a rounded curve like this on that particular holster design, but I'm going to keep it kind of sharp and maybe just even taper it up a little bit. And I'm useless at drawing straight lines all the way down, so do forgive me if it looks a little bit hairy. Okay, something like that. And I think I'm going to exaggerate this curve a bit more. It's a little bit too flat, so let's kind of bring it. Yes, maybe make it poke out a bit, something like that. So it almost it looks like an interesting design and shape in of itself. And then, you know, on the other side you can just have, that's the back part there, and it can just be, oh dearie me. My hand is quite skittish today, it seems. There we go, that just goes wherever it needs to go. There, that's the back part. There you go. Okay, so we've got like a solid front section here, and you can just kind of give that a nice little trim as well, why not? Okay, I can carry that all the way around there. Okay, and then like this kind of holster suggests, you can kind of have some kind of threading going on here, maybe, just to kind of tie it all together. So let's see, what could we do? We could do, yeah, we could do kind of threading like this. Threading that kind of gets wrapped around, it's sewn into the holster to kind of tie it all together. Yep, and then you'll get threading going around the other side too. So it kind of looks a little bit like this one here. Okay, why not have some kind of a knot or something, maybe something like that, and have it loose like in that design there, something hanging down. You can maybe have an emblem here of some kind as well. That would be probably quite nice as well. And we could even kind of just draw a line down the middle here, just as an accent line to kind of separate half the holster. Yeah, I think that's not so bad. So this is kind of an open holster. She doesn't have to undo anything to get access to her gun. And of course, let's just spend a little bit more time here seeing what happens if we introduce belts. What happens if we introduce belts? You might be thinking, but Mike, it's already wrapped. We don't need to introduce belts to wrap it. Doesn't matter. If it looks cool, we're going to do it. That's the general idea. Is it practical? Not always. But does it look cool though? That's the answer. That's the question. We want to be entertaining at this stage. Okay, if we start making a model and, you know, it's ridiculous, like for example, we don't want to like give her inflatable swimming things or something like that. It's just ridiculous, but that also doesn't look cool. So my rule stands. Okay, if it looks cool, we're going with it. That's generally my feeling. Well, Final Fantasy it. There we go. You don't always need a good reason as to why that's there the way it is. It's just there because. Okay. So you can see adding the belts kind of adds a different element to it. It's not a bad element. I don't know if I'm 100% such a fan of it, but it's there nonetheless. You know, that's the idea. That's what we're doing at this stage. We're exploring some of these ideas there. Okay. Now I'm going to leave these black and white because, again, the color is kind of determinant based upon what we're going to color the whole character in with. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. Okay. So hopefully that's a nice little kind of exploration in terms of what we're going to do with holsters. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is spend the next video looking at different sword scabbards. It's going to be quite short, so let's go ahead and do that.